What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today we're checking out a really impressive smartphone that has a 6.7-inch AMOLED display, an ultra-thin design, a 50-megapixel camera, and a 5,000 milliamp hour battery that comes in at a total price of $200, which is really impressive. But in 2022, I think it's a very good example of how good of a smartphone or technology product in general you can get at a very affordable price point, which is going to be very popular in the international markets. This is the Infinix Note 12, and I want to give a huge thanks to Infinix for sponsoring this video. And if you guys like to win one for yourself, just go ahead and subscribe to the channel, drop a thumbs up on this video, leave a comment down below with your Instagram username, and I'll be picking a winner down there in 1 month and contacting you directly on Instagram. On this channel, I feel like we do cover a very wide variety of products in different categories, whether it is the best of the best and the most expensive offering, as well as items that I would say are not budget, but kind of in the value tier, where for the money that you're spending, you're getting every ounce of it back in terms of performance, design, and build quality. And this right here is the perfect example of that. So taking a look at the unboxing experience, this phone itself is actually a pretty good size. It has a large screen that is good for multimedia, but at the same time, it doesn't feel overwhelmingly large. And taking it out of the box, it includes just a nice case to be able to carry around with you. And it also comes with the power brick, and there's a 33-watt fast charger. And I think the first thing that I noticed as soon as I turned on the Infinix Note 12 G96 is that the display quality is really good. Normally for phones of this price point, you're not going to find like maybe the highest quality display. Either it has a low resolution and low brightness and color rendition, or it's missing something else. But this right here has an HD+ AMOLED display that is a full HD resolution, but it does have a 100% DCI-P3 color gamut coverage, which not only gives you like a really good range of colors when you're editing photos or viewing content, but most importantly, just from looking at the screen itself, it is really like vibrant, sharp, and clean compared to the 100,000:1 contrast ratio. To be totally honest with you, when I first opened up this phone, I actually didn't know how much it officially costs. I just received it, turned it on, set it up for myself, and the first thing that I really noticed is that the screen looks great. It wasn't until afterwards when I received the information from the press release that I found out that this phone was just $200, which is just insane because my usage of it was just under the impression that it was kind of in like the mid-tier price point. But for a phone to have a display like this, even if you just want to use it for like multimedia of watching YouTube videos, going on social media, it is absolutely going to deliver an impressive experience, and for that alone, I feel like it's already exceeded its price point. The next aspect to talk about is the performance. And typically when you find a smartphone that is in a mid-tier price point or in a budget tier, it has like a processor that is a few steps down from the flagship model. And in this case, you have the MediaTek G96 chipset. It is a 64-bit octa-core infrastructure that uses 2 powerful ARM Cortex-A76 and 6 ARM Cortex-A55 processors clocked up to 2.05 gigahertz. This is all combined with the ARM Mali G57 GPU. I think another area that I also found very unique from a hardware perspective that not only keeps the price point down, but allows you to adapt the performance based on your needs is the ability to adapt the amount of RAM that your smartphone utilizes. By default, it includes 8 gigabytes of internal RAM, but you actually have the option to utilize the ROM to be able to add up to an additional 5 gigabytes of RAM assistance to the actual 8 gigabytes of RAM. So you can have up to 13 gigabytes of usable RAM, and you go into the settings and you have the option to trigger that between 1 gigabyte, 2 gigabytes, or 3 gigabytes. This MEM Fusion function is really nice because you take a look at the flagship smartphones on the market, and a lot of them have like about 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM, and a lot of people just don't really utilize all that RAM. You might just be on social media, doing some emails, and in that case, you don't really need to utilize the MEM Fusion and extended RAM, but say you're gaming on this, which this phone is totally able to handle gaming very capably. You're able to really take advantage of the maximum performance by adapting the settings based on your own needs. When it comes to the design overall, at a price point of $200, I think there are certain expectations or stereotypes that are typically attached to a budget smartphone. The biggest one is having bigger bezels, being a thicker phone, and at the same time keeping it very simple. And from looking at the back here, you could see that it is very, very simple, which seems to be like the overall design directive across the board. They didn't really add any like elegant touches or anything, which is totally fine. I mean, it gets the job done, but if you take a look at the sides here, it is nicely wrapped around, it's comfortable to hold, and the phone is just so thin. You see how it like chamfers along, the glass is raised, it feels nicely constructed and protected, but as you flip it over to the front, you can see the bezels are still relatively small, aside from a small chin on the front here, and the camera is integrated on the top, and you still have a ton of usable space, and at 6.7 inches, I do feel like this like really came across as a premium smartphone as soon as I opened it out of the box. One thing that I did also notice is that the button placement is great. You have your volume rockers over on the right side, which is something that I'm not typically used to, but the power button is perfectly placed in the middle, and you do have a fingerprint sensor that is built in underneath. Over on the other side, they keep it completely clean, and so if you like want to hold it for gaming or watching multimedia, you don't have to worry about like accidentally like pressing the volume button if you put it down this way, and at the same time it has plenty of room to grip without too many buttons too close to the edge that again contribute to accidental touches. So I think the overall approach here is great, and on the bottom here you're going to find your USB Type-C, your speaker grills, and also a 3.5mm headphone jack, which I've noticed in the past budget smartphones seem to keep a lot of the legacy features that a lot of people have troubles letting go of for a lot longer. One element that I do also appreciate that they didn't cut corners on for a budget phone is that it still has dual speakers. When it comes to the battery life performance, this phone has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and it also includes a 33-watt charging brick in the box, which, as you know, a lot of flagship smartphones and manufacturers have eliminated the power brick entirely and instead made it something that you have to go ahead and purchase it separately. So in this case, you do still get a nice, powerful charging brick, and it's rated for up to 800 charge cycles or 85% battery retention. So now when it comes to the camera on the back here, you're gonna find a dual camera setup. And going into the camera app, you'll actually see that there is like the AI cam, and that utilizes the sensor right here to be able to detect like distances for focus as well as what you're taking pictures of. And the first thing that I noticed is that the color accuracy is definitely there. The white balance of this camera was really good, and at the same time, you do also have the ability to take night photos because it utilizes both of the sensors to be able to capture the most data, and it's able to also take photos at a high resolution of up to 50 megapixels using that f1.6 sensor. You can go ahead and take a look at some of the photos that we took here in Miami, and although I will admit these were very optimal conditions with great sunlight, beautiful colors, and in general most smartphones are going to be able to get a good photo out of that scenario, I think in particular, considering this is a $200 smartphone, a lot of times cameras are an area where the people buying these phones may not prioritize it as much, especially when multimedia, connectivity, and battery life are the main priorities that you consider for a smartphone that is able to perform but at a budget price point. These photos really did have a good level of dynamic range and detail, and so yeah, I would say for the price point, I was definitely quite impressed with it. And when it came to the video quality, I would say it was decent. It was able to get like a pretty sharp image, once again very balanced, but at the same time it wasn't oversaturated, which is something that I have noticed on a lot of Android phones where the colors are just completely out of place. So at the end of the day, as someone who hasn't reviewed a budget smartphone in quite a few years, what is my impression of potentially the best option on the market in 2022 for under $200? And I've got to say, I am very impressed. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I had no idea what the price point of this phone was. I knew it wasn't going to be like a flagship price point, but I figured maybe it was like $400 or $500. And instead, for $200, you have a very, very complete experience here. I love the display, the battery life is great, the design is nice and minimal while solid, and at the same time the software experience is actually pretty satisfying, but I think the icons are more down to personal preference. It is definitely a very colorful, interactive ecosystem that, I mean, some people like and some people might find it a bit much, but I think it is playful and at the same time intuitive. That kind of goes along with Infinix's approach of this phone, where I feel like they've kind of focused on each category pretty effectively while also keeping the price point down. They talk a lot about gaming and very confidently, and how this phone is able to handle games like PUBG, for example, both on like a graphics and spec perspective, but at the same time through the battery, the form factor, and the 10-layered graphene cooling technology that is able to reduce the overall like running temperature of the smartphone by up to 6 degrees Celsius. So I know I have like a big international audience, and if you're looking for a smartphone that is under $200, I think you really can't go wrong with the Infinix Note 12 G96. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.